Welcome back, beautiful tri-state area. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. I'm your host, Zen Sams. Up next in the Phoenix Rising segment, brought to you by Chicago's Chicken Shack nonprofit, we're joined by contributor and podcaster Anna Devere, and today she is joined by the incredible Jerome Haferd. He's a licensed architect, public artist, and an educator based in Harlem, New York, right here. He is the principal of the award-winning Jerome Haferd Studio, which produces build projects and artworks nationwide, and the core initiator of Dark Matter University, where he received the Black Visionaries Award back in 2022. Now, if that wasn't enough, he's also an assistant professor at City College's Spitzer School of Architecture, where he co-directs the Place, Memory, and Culture Incubator. They're going to join me today to talk about his meaningful impact in the architectural world and how he works to highlight and elevate important voices and pieces of history with new creations. Welcome to the show, my friends.
Hello.
Hello.
Let's dive right in. You are currently based right here in Harlem, but you originally came from the Midwest. I can imagine you experienced quite the shift when transitioning from one place to the other. Just some shift, right? And it's clear through your work that you hold great value in culture. So, can you talk about your sense of purpose in being a cultural architect and what drives your vision?
Yeah, when I say cultural architect, I think for me, people, culture, and history are really providing a lot of exciting material for me as a designer and an architect. I grew up in a single parent household in the Midwest in Akron, Ohio, shout out. And I really wanted to be an artist. And my fascination with architecture really began with just drawing anything, any buildings that I could see back there in Akron. And I thought at that time I knew what architecture was. And over the years, I've really been reminded every day that the arts and architecture are really so much more and so much better than when we first encounter them. They're the kind of gift that keeps on giving. So fast forward to today in my practice, I really am insisting that architecture, like the other arts, is fundamentally a cultural endeavor. And that means that it's the built environment is really an extension of our humanity. And that kind of belief for me really drives my practice.
That's beautiful.
I want to say that I feel very fortunate that I was able to walk into an installation of yours in Marcus Garvey Park in Harlem. It was a beautiful day. Can you talk a little bit about your vision? Because I felt the impact of it. And I want you to share, like, what do you mean about doing futuristic installations that also have a sense of the ancestral past?
The installation is called Sankofa, which that name, for those who don't know, really derives from several different African traditions and is depicted as this bird, the Sankofa bird, that looks back to history while it's walking forward into the future as a kind of value. And so this project was really conceived of as the circle, as an interactive public installation that is 32 feet in diameter, and is this kind of beautiful open air enclosure made of steel, wood, and a giant woven canopy that folks sit underneath of and host events and enjoy themselves. So that, the ancestral aspect of this is that the inspiration for that pavilion came about through looking at indigenous architecture, traditional African architecture that we see today still. And then the futuristic is that, I'm a contemporary designer. So we used AI, we used digital software. And so the feel of it is very fresh and new at the same time.
Agreed.
You're just brilliant.
That's why we bring him. He's brilliant.
Make it sound easy, but it's not.
I can envision how complex this might be, and you delivered it like it was a seamless vanilla project, and I'm like, it didn't happen that fast and that easy, but kudos to you for making it seem like it was step 1, 2, and 3. But the projects and artworks from your studio, and this is what I really want to talk about, they often look to highlight marginalized histories and unlock what we call this new imaginary, right, for architecture and design and cultural infrastructure, which I think is what really sets you apart in your field. Now, I know you and your team have worked on many complex sites, including collaborations with the Harlem African Burial Ground, Roots to Sky Collective, the Park Avenue Armory, and the National Black Theater. Now, engaging with both urban and rural contexts, your studio, I'm seeing consistently focuses on sites of Black or Indigenous history and and that cultural significance nationwide. So, what is your vision for how we should honor and memorialize these significant sites?
Yeah, so I would say this really working in that space, which is really, I think, an inclusive endeavor, began about 8 years ago now, when I became aware of the Harlem African Burial Ground, which is a site that is still being worked on archaeologically and thought of for an eventual living memorial. And for me, my vision for these sites as a designer is that they sort of change us as much as we change them. And that these kind of histories really are this invitation to think differently about design and to bring in some of this other material that hasn't really been focused on in art, and certainly not in architecture. So especially a lot of this history, there's not always a lot of archive there
Right.
to work with. So you have to really be imaginative in how we even do memorials or public spaces, that I think also can take on the act of repair
Right.
in that challenge as well. So how can we you know start to think of memorials as something that is a lasting thing, that is sort of unfolding over time, that is helping to repair the environment around it, and also helping to repair ourselves.
I want to highlight one more thing before we move on to a different project is that when I was in Marcus Garvey in Sankofa, you actually had benches that included vining plants that the
Yeah,
community 2 years later is still tending those tender little plants. You
yeah,
actually got married in the upper installation in that park, and it feels very much like you've created sacred space. And I
yeah.
feel very honored to have witnessed like what you're talking about, how important it is to the community that they tend that as their own sacred space, much more than just an architectural phenomenon. It's really achieving what it set out to do. Congratulations. As Zen said, we're both blown away. I want to talk a little bit about In the Wake. It's your first place competition design, and it's for Africatown in Alabama. Can you talk a little bit about that project and what it represents?
This community really sort of shot into the spotlight around 2019 with the rediscovery of the quote unquote last slave ship, the Clotilda. And there's now been documentaries made about this. Questlove did a documentary about this because he has roots there. But that's the context by which this community have, really are one of the only, if not the only, Black community in the US that have a coherent link back to Africa through the record of this ship and that history. And so it's super important at a national or international level. And they put forth a competition looking to create a cultural mile all throughout this community that also would repair the environment and produce different sites that can also be a support system for this community, which has a lot of chronic economic and environmental troubles. So we worked on the second of these four sites and proposed really almost giant versions of Sankofa, something that really took the imagination of what it means to think about African history in the United States, in this new land, and mixed together texture, fabric at the scale of these large venues that will eventually host a replica of that ship, which I think is a really important public monument to that history. We can't take for granted that 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 history is accepted by everybody in the United States. So I think more monuments that sort of insist on the truth of that history are really important.
I love that you're really truly looking at this as an entire nationwide um, exhibit, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So I want
Yeah.
to talk about Dark Matter University. This is tell us more about this and about what this space and about why this space is so unique. Number one, I love the name Dark Matter University, but through this transdisciplinary network that I understand, it's geared towards new models of design, pedagogy, and practice, which you are a core initiator of. So please elaborate on this.
Yeah, and so Dark Matter University, or Dark Matter U, because it's not technically a university, which is also allows it to be special in this way. I love that you're describing it as a space, because it really is a space, and it is an architecture, but it's an architecture that is now really over the both physical networks, but also virtual networks. So a group of us in the design fields, a lot of different emerging designers who are also in academia, many of us of color, just started to meet regularly and create a network of support and mentorship, and also started to do a lot of design work together. So we create exhibitions, we create events, and we do a lot of outreach and awareness building around the possibility of working in this kind of interdisciplinary way with folks who you may not be physically, proximate to, but how we have a kind of ongoing collaboration over the airways that's really innovative.
And I'm really proud to have you as an anchor in the Phoenix Rising New York City project, you and your husband, who will play cello at that event. I know you were married in that art installation. I'm so happy that I viewed it firsthand. Anybody that wants to have more Jerome Haferd, can you please tell us what you're working on in Harlem currently with the water table?
Yeah, so I'm really excited to have been commissioned for a permanent artwork in New York City. And this artwork is in many ways being envisioned as an exploration in weaving and flowing and movement made permanent.
Hmm.
So we're designing a large kind of seating, enclosed seating area, like a plaza, that is composed out of these strands that'll be made of concrete and stone and steel that will flow into the East River, and is really about that gathering at the water's edge, which we've done for thousands and thousands of years, and is going to incorporate artwork from young people in this really close neighborhood here.
Amazing.
Well, we are officially
So
out of
stay
time.
tuned for that. That's
Yeah,
coming in 2026
let's
with
go.
with
We're
the
I
new
told you,
with
you're
the
road
new
mapping.
Esplanade on the East River.
We're going to hear a
Ano
lot from
Yeah.
Jerome. Yeah.
Yeah, Jerome and the roadmap. Well, we are officially out of time. We're at the end of our date, my dear friends. Thank you so much for joining me, Jerome. Anna, it's always a pleasure to have you on. But you are truly inspiring. I love what you're doing. Keep up the great work, and we will continue to share your voice with our listeners.
Thank you so much. What a pleasure.
That was our Phoenix Rising segment brought to you by Chicago's Chicken Shack nonprofit. And that was the incredible Jerome Haferd. Definitely head to his website, jeromehaferd.com, to learn more about his latest projects and check him out on the gram at jhaferd. And of course, don't forget to also check out our beloved Anna at Anna_Devere. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. We'll be right back after this.